Hi, my name's Elizabeth Solaru, and I'm the author of the book, The Luxpreneur, How to Start and Build a Successful Luxury Brand. And I'm also the founder and CEO of Diversity in Luxury Awards. On this online prosperity show with Prosper, I'm going to bring you lots of nuggets on how to start and build your own luxury brand, how to empower yourselves, how to combat imposter syndrome. And you will hear my story from scrappy underdog, scientist by day, cake maker by night, and how I turned all that into my very successful luxury consulting business.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, where we bring you inspiring stories and actionable insights that will help you build a business that's profitable and enjoyable. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today I'm beyond excited to introduce someone who's taken the art of reinvention to a whole new level. Now, Elizabeth, how are you doing today?
I'm really well, thank you. How are you?
I am doing mighty fine. I gotta ask you, behind you there, is that cake or those are actual books?
Those are actual books. Those are actual.
Absolutely. For those that are watching right now, you might be thinking, wait a minute, have I just logged into some Netflix special? Is it cake? No, this is what we're going to be talking about. So let me introduce you to Elizabeth, who is an ex-scientist who's turned into a luxury cake artist. And trust me when I say her journey is as deliciously layered as the cakes that she actually creates. Now, from her, working from Benson Burners. I don't know if you've ever seen what scientists do. This is what my idea or visualization of what, Elizabeth was doing, mixing chemicals or testing hypotheses. She's actually crafted an extraordinary career blending the precision of science with the artistry of luxury. She's the founder of Diversity in Luxury and also Luxury Business Emporium. And both of these platforms are elevating diversity and redefining what it means to create a luxury brand. Now it's about time we got represented. We're tired of wearing other people's last names without our own names being represented in the luxury market there. But let's be clear, Elizabeth's story isn't just about cakes or the glitz and the glam of luxury. It's about resilience, reinvention, and how to turn passion into a business that actually inspires others. And if you know anything about diversity and everything else, representation matters. So we're going to be here talking about all of those things and how Elizabeth is, representing, the marginalized and people of color that are doing mighty well, especially when it comes to business and things of that nature. So we're going to learn the secrets behind her unique clientele and also dive into what has made her a person to note in the luxury space and how she's made luxury accessible while staying true to her own values. And we've got a fascinating tidbit for you. Some of the cakes that Elizabeth has made have actually graced the royal tables. So we're in the midst of royalty here. Okay, so you heard that right. So I want you to stick around because you're not going to want to miss out on everything that she has done from her past being a scientist and how that has shaped her luxury business, growth and her being an innovator in that space. Now, Elizabeth, I'm going on and on about things I'm not even qualified to talk about. I mean, I get paid to hype up people. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about your journey and how you actually left the science field to start doing luxury cakes.
Okay. So to give you a potted history, I studied microbiology at university, and then I got my master's in medical microbiology and parasitology. And then I got a trainee job at St. Mary's Hospital in Paddington, and then worked at many other London hospitals, because in the UK we have something called the NHS. Worked with the NHS for about 13, 15 years, something like that. And then I remember thinking there's got to be more to life than being in a lab. And I remember at that time I secured a PhD because I always wanted to do my PhD, secured a PhD, but I thought, no, there's got to be more to life. And I remember just resigning after a conversation I had with a colleague. There were other factors as well, but I just thought, if I don't do it now, I'll never do it. So I resigned with no other place to go. That was on a Monday. By the Thursday, I got a phone call and I got an opportunity to do some locuming, which was temping work in different hospitals. And I thought, okay, at least that's income secured. And then I remember thinking I might want to do something in business. So typical, I just enrolled in another master's program, did an MBA. And it was while I was doing the MBA that I realized that my scientific CV is not going to get me the kind of job that I wanted. So I decided to invest heavily in networking. And it was while I was networking, meeting people, just networking, that was when I got my headhunter role. So somebody literally said, I'm starting a new business. Would you like to come and work for me? And that marked another shift in my career. So did the headhunting role. I remember I was seconded to the Cabinet Office in the UK, which is a big deal. It was a big government thing to help start a leadership program. Again, I had no absolute knowledge, but I was eager to do it. I did, common sense, etc. Did that, and then still carried on doing my headhunting role. With the headhunting, it was all about people. I was a matchmaker, and my job was to match the right client to the right candidate and other things in between. So again, just a lot of networking. And then 2008, I lost my job because the financial markets hit. So I just thought to myself, okay, this is it. If I don't do it now, I'll never do it. So, and I decided to set up my business making cakes, which was a childhood dream. So I always baked when I was a child, and I picked it up again when I was working as a headhunter to relieve stress. And that was how I found myself setting up a cake company. But I had a problem. I didn't have any clients and I needed to get clients. So I did two things. So the first thing I did was speak to one of my delivery drivers, and he spoke about that they leaflet. So it was direct marketing. So literally they would put leaflets through homes. And I said, oh, do you go to really nice areas? And he said, yes. So I made a bunch of really lovely cards, beautiful cards. And I said, okay, put these in the nicest, most posh homes. And he did. I only gave him maybe like £20 a week or something. And we did that regularly for at least 6 months. So that was the first thing I did. And the second thing I did was I took the yellow pages, because in those days, social media wasn't a thing. And I remember I called every event planner in the yellow pages. There was probably about 300 of them. And I remember after I called about 120, I called a particular office, and a very young girl said, oh, do you make cupcakes? And I said, of course we make cupcakes. And I'm going to be in your area in the next 3 days. This was something I'd been trained to do as a headhunter, because as a headhunter, we had a target of making 100 calls a week. So these were cold calls to try and get meetings. So cold calling, it was all about rejection. So you had to get your no's, which was fine. So, but this day I got a yes, and I said, okay, I'm going to be in your area next 3 days. I'm going to drop some samples. So I dropped the samples, and I remember thinking, I'm not going to let them know I'm Elizabeth. I'm just going to drop my samples and run. And I did that. And on my way back, I got a call saying Lady Elizabeth would like to meet you. And in my head, I was like, who's Lady Elizabeth? And it turned out that this Lady Elizabeth, it was the late Queen Elizabeth's first cousin, and she's a party planner, very high-end party planner, does all royal weddings, society weddings, etc. And she wanted to meet me, so I went back, met her, and I got an order from her on the spot, and she gave me a private banking check. And I remember looking at the check thinking, oh my God. So again, that was a massive, massive turning point for me, because I had the audacity to just cold call, and by serendipity, I managed to get this particular order. Now, the story would have been great if it ended there, because I did the cupcakes for this particular event. I remember she said she was hiring three different cake makers. I was doing the cupcakes, somebody else was doing something else. And I then got a letter, a really beautiful letter from her, saying that the cupcakes were beautiful, they were delicious. Everybody said they were the best cake tasting cakes of the night. And she then gave me permission to use her words in all my marketing material. And that was such a generous, generous thing for her to do. She didn't have to do it, but she did it. And of course, I used her words. I still have her words on my website. She's passed on now, God rest her soul. But I've never, ever forgotten that act of generosity. And that was how really the cake thing, that was how it started.
Fantastic. And congratulations. They always say there's 6 degrees of a separation. So I literally have, the hotline to the, to Buckingham Palace right now, through you there. So thank you so much and congratulations for that. Now, you did mention that as a child, you were into cake baking and, things of that nature. Why biology then?
Okay. I was very good with the sciences. I actually got admission to do medicine and dentistry, but mathematics was my Achilles heel. So I couldn't get the right grades for maths, but I'd always been scientific inclined. I just loved science. I didn't even think I was artistic at all, but I know I loved baking because a friend of mine in secondary school gave me a cookbook, and I saw the recipe for Victoria sponge. I made it, it worked. And it was just love for me. So, but when you get to a certain age in a Nigerian household, you've got to put away certain things and face your studies, because education is so paramount. I mean, I can't even begin to explain how important it is. And that was what happened. So I just had to focus on the science because I like sciences anyway. And that was how I found myself studying microbiology, which I happen to absolutely love. I just loved knowing about all these different behaviors of organisms. And yeah, it just came naturally. So for me, it just felt that I had to be a scientist. And I literally, in fact, all my professors at university, they swore that I was going to become a professor. I was on the right track. I was doing really well. I got the grades. I just had a natural understanding of science. But sometimes life will take you in a different direction. And I've always been a very curious person. And I remember thinking, I don't want to leave this earth without exploring every other parts of me, things that I think I have to offer. Because yes, you can stick to one career if you're totally happy and satisfied. But if you're a curious person and you want to know if there's more out there, I would just suggest you go for it.
Absolutely. And obviously, I was just thinking to myself, I mean, as somebody who had those dreams, you then went on a whole different path, but it's a good thing that you absolutely loved that path. But I want to know the conversation that would have then happened on the day when you decided, okay, I'm not going to go and pursue this well recognized career and I'm going to start baking cakes. What was that like with the parents, the family, relatives, and all those people around you, especially when, you decided I'm leaving safety to this side of, vocation that you went on and took?
Well, okay, it wasn't kind of an overnight thing. What had happened was that while I was a headhunter, I actually had a side hustle, which was the cakes. So I was actually doing the cakes, but obviously I didn't let anybody at work know. So what I was doing was I was saving up my money. I was learning. I was traveling to America. I was going to cake camp in America, and I was making contact and developing my style in the cake community. So that was going alongside. And then I dipped my toe by doing wedding shows. So I'll just do some cakes, take them to wedding shows, and see if there was interest. And while I was doing that, I got spotted by a TV producer. So he came to film somebody else completely, flowers, and he just wasn't happy with the footage. So he came to film the lady next to me, who was a florist, and he then left. Then he came back again to film my cakes. And he said to me, oh, would you like to tell me something about cake trends? And I was just talking. I literally was saying things, and he was very happy. So he left. And then he came back to me. He said he has this idea for a cake show where people compete and there are winners in different categories, etc. And I said, oh, that's great. So I gave him a list of all the other cake makers that I felt were professional cake makers, because remember, I was not a professional cake maker. I was just a headhunter. So I gave him a list of names, and he said, no, 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 I want you to be part of this show because I want a mixed ability group. So I said, okay, why not? So went on the show, and to my shock and surprise, I won 3 out of 3 times out of the competition. And that was how, in a way, it was a claim to fame in the cake community and in the wedding community, because the program was on Wedding TV, which is a YouTube channel. So I think for me, that kind of confirmed in a way, and it gave me that external validation that maybe my cakes were good enough. And that really helped, because obviously if I've been on TV, then that means the cakes are fine. So I didn't really have loads of conversations with parents or family or anything like that. I just did it. I literally just did what I needed to do, because once you get to a certain age, it was a milestone age, and I thought, I'm just going to do it, and this is it for me. So, and I suppose the thinking is I can always fall back on science if it doesn't work out. I can always go back to work. So that was it, really.
No, I think with the Queen's endorsement, you becoming a reality TV star, this was all anybody would have needed to validate that this whole thing was working. And let's go back to the Queen, a little bit. I mean, obviously, congratulations. That's a really good thing. But the way this came about was after you had rang so many people. I can imagine, just ringing people up, cold calling, picking up the phone, saying, hey, would you like to buy cakes, or do you want some samples, and things like that. Wouldn't you have wanted to give up at least at call number 100?
No, no, because I just needed to earn money, and I hadn't called. For me, my job is not done until I call everybody in the yellow pages. So I had a mission. It was to call every number. And also there's an element, like I said, of curiosity. It doesn't matter how many people say no. You just need the right yes. For me anyway. And that's how I am. I think a lot of people hate rejection, and they can't deal with rejection. But for the most part, even if the rejection is personal, just because they've said no today doesn't mean they'll say no tomorrow. Quite a few of the people that I called in the yellow pages, they are still, some of them, well, a few of them, not many of them, but a few of them are still in business. I've never worked with them, but they know me. We're in the event planning world or whatever, wedding planning world together. So they know me. They'll never work with me, but that doesn't matter because I proved my point. My point was, I just wanted someone to give me an opportunity, somebody to give me a chance. And I love that the very people that they look up to were giving me opportunities. So sometimes we don't have to be compatible with everybody. You never know who's going to say yes to you. And sometimes the people that say yes to you need to be selective about the people that say yes to you anyway. And that's the whole point, I believe, in that's the whole point sometimes of luxury, that your type of luxury might not be suitable for somebody else. So you need to be aware of that, and you need to come to terms with that. So for me, it didn't, I mean, rejection's not great, but maybe because from my previous job, you just got used to people saying no, and then finally you land the big one. So yeah, that was it for me.
Sales training says you should always have, this acronym: some will, some won't, so what, and then you just keep moving on, because it was at call number 120 that you actually landed one of your biggest claims to fame, which even up until now is something that, so many people would respect you and give you accolades for. Now, the Queen gave you a personal check. When you went with it to the bank, what was the response?
No, none, because it was, in those days, there was a check over the counter, you pay into your account. The bank teller, they've seen thousands before. It wasn't a big deal, to be honest with you. And, it wasn't for a huge amount, because I made the classic mistake of, I didn't charge properly. I was way too cheap. I didn't charge for delivery. I didn't charge for anything else. I threw in a lot. So at the end of the day, it was no big deal. But for me, it was a milestone moment. It was a validation. It was almost like an endorsement that if somebody of that, somebody who's been around the world, she's planned events around the world for the best people, eating at the best restaurants, and she thought my cakes were amazing. So that for me was all the validation that I needed. I didn't need anything else. So the only thing I regret, I wish I had photocopied that check so I could have it. That was the only thing I regret. But apart from that, to be honest with you, yeah, since then, you have so many different types of clients. And I've been very fortunate because, again, maybe it's my scientific background. I like studying people. Because my previous job as a headhunter was by human nature, it was by human psychology, and being able to work with such people close up, it gave me a first-hand view of the different types of luxury clients. And that was one of the reasons I wrote my book, because without people like that, without me having the opportunity to work with people of a certain caliber, I would not have had the opportunity to be close up, to study them, and be able to break down the different types and their habits and how they buy, and more importantly, why they buy, where you can find them and how you can engage with them. So for me, it's like a full circle moment. So it all came together for me.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot to learn because, royal people is old money. It's the quiet luxury type people. It's not the flashy or whatnot. They know, they even have in-house, artisans that are supposed to be doing those kind of jobs. So if they're going to be outsourcing that type of work and even being excited about it, that must have, been very, very exceptional. Now, for those that are watching right now, they might want to think, you might, being a microbiologist, the things that tantalizes, test buds, or how to affect the human psyche to see the cakes as something unique, and give them that sort of appeal, or use science to make people find your cakes delicious. But then, is there a not so obvious connection between science and art, and especially cake artistry, because you seem to have managed to merge both worlds together, and this actually helped you propel in the kind of work that you're doing?
Well, I mean, for me anyway, I have a saying, science is art and art is science. And what do I mean? A lot of people think that art is spontaneous and just random. It isn't. There are certain rules with art. Whether you follow those rules consciously or subconsciously, there are rules to art. And in science, there's a bit of art in science as well. So, for example, Alexander Fleming discovering penicillin, he didn't discover it, he just made it up, he made an observation. So, and if he hadn't left a petri dish out with a mold growing and made those observations, so there is in science, a lot of people think that everything has to be, and everything is orderly, everything you follow steps, etc. However, you need to think of how did we derive those steps? How did we arrive at those steps? Those steps, were arrived at after a lot of experimentation. And a lot of experimentation is art because you don't know what's going to work. So you say, okay, let me try this. The only difference is with that kind of art, you measure and you try to replicate certain conditions. But both art and science, they coexist, they're in each other. And there's something around intersectionality where both, there's a Venn, if you do a Venn diagram or whatever, both, there's a little intersection. So I've always believed that as humans, we should definitely be at that intersection and not be so binary. This is art, this is science, because both can be true at the same time. And there's another intersection where you now have technology, where you now have a couple of other things. So there's a lot going on in the world right now. And I love the fact that people are not, okay, you are either this or that. That's not working. And especially if you're trying to explore different things, or I use the word curious a lot. If you're curious about things, you need to see how things can work. So yeah, years and years and years ago, I remember in the early days of the internet, when we had a shed load of search engines. I was talking to somebody, we had Alta Vista, we had Yahoo, we had, so many. But many people forget that those search engines actually started life as scientific paper search engines, because in order to, so you don't go to a dusty library and look through thousands and thousands of journals, somebody created a search engine for journals. And half the time, it didn't work because it just threw up really terrible results. But this was then taken over, refined, a bit of art was added to it, so you can never separate certain things anymore because there's a lot of intersectionality nowadays.
Absolutely. Just look at the mighty phone in and of itself. There's a lot of science packed into this tablet or constellation. I don't know what you call it, rectangular device, but also presented in an artistic way that you are happy to carry it around everywhere you go. So I can only imagine, all the things that you're mentioning. But it also takes a certain kind of person that can blend the left brain and the right brain together, because that synergy seems to confuse so many people. You know, when it comes to rationality and emotionally thinking, so many people arrive at different conclusions. And I think that's the diversity that we now have. And I think you've actually put that all together. So diversity in luxury is such a powerful concept. First of all, can you maybe explain to us what that is and what that entails and how you were inspired to champion such a cause?
Yeah, it kind of started in 2020. Obviously, there was the Black Lives Matter movement, and lots of companies posted a black square, and then nothing happened. And I remember, I just literally the word diversity, the phrase diversity in luxury just popped into my head. So I remember Googling, and I found a paper written by a professor, I think from Penn State University or something, and she said that there was little diversity in luxury. And I didn't really believe that, kind of. I mean, I knew she was partly right, but she wasn't completely right. And I remember 2020, a lot of us, we went to Clubhouse, and this app was obviously an audio app. And I remember looking for a room that was talking about luxury business, because I don't want to talk about luxury lifestyle, which is about buying goods and flying on jet planes and stuff like that. I literally wanted a business, and I couldn't find a room that talked about luxury business. So I started a room. I was joined by another guy. He was also very much into luxury business. I remember we even created a podcast called the Luxury News Weekly. So all that was going, but then I realized that apart from me and this guy, who looked like me, there weren't that many people of color in that luxury space openly talking about luxury business. So that really struck me. And then I also looked at a number of things. Number one, people of color are actually the biggest demographic when it comes to buying luxury goods. Last year proved it, because spending in China went down, and the luxury industry a lot, they really felt the hurt. So people of color buy luxury goods, spend more on luxury goods, and yet are not represented within these companies, or not really represented even in the customer demographic, which I thought was a bit strange. And then I realized that a lot of known luxury brands were actually doing really cool stuff. They were doing really, really good stuff, but they weren't talking about it. So to give you an example, the brand Chanel, they have a foundation that put money, millions and millions of euros, towards the education of girls around the world. But nobody has ever heard of the foundation. It's called Fondation Chanel. Nobody's heard of it. And then I remember that when the CEO of Chanel was appointed in 2022, she was a woman of color, Indian heritage, and a lot of people of color were so happy. A lot of women were happy. And she then increased that fund from 20 million euros to 100 million euros. And that really interested me, because I thought, as a new hire, as a new CEO, the first thing you don't do in the first 90 days is spend your company's money. So that told me that, oh my God, her heart and definitely her values and her ethics are in the right place. So it's things like that that I started seeing. And I thought I was going to set up a Diversity in Luxury Awards that rewards companies for doing good, especially in areas of charity, sustainability, areas of empowerment, areas of inclusivity. And what we then decided to do was look for examples around the world. So it's not just known brands, even very little known brands, like a needlecraft school in India, for example, that does embroidery for Dior, and Hermes that many people hadn't heard of. We look for examples like that. The unusual. To me, diversity is everything. Diversity is diversity of thought, of action, diversity of ideas, diversity of how you do things, innovation, inclusivity. So it's not just binary, black, white. It's more a blend of everything. So, for example, some of our nominees even included people who did adaptive designs for people with disabilities. We have a category for travel. We have a category leadership in leadership for social change. So people who are doing amazing things and who have the ability to effect change. Those are some of the things that we are looking for, and I'm really passionate about it. And when I founded it, I didn't have any money. I didn't have a massive agenda. But what I did find was a community of people who were very keen to support. And exactly last week, we had our second awards, which was very well attended. 50 brands. We had brands flying in from all over the world to attend the awards. So that for me is a kind of change and kind of legacy that I would love to leave the luxury industry.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for pioneering that. I mean, obviously, like you have said, you know, the luxury industry is sort of like dominated by old money, is dominated by old families, and it's things that have been passed down from generation to generation, whereas it's very difficult for new players to come in, and so many people would need deep pockets in order to just create that brand awareness. But I think with the awards, that might actually be a platform, you know, that people can jump onto, and you know, things of that nature. Now, you're entering in an industry where money talks. I mean, you're talking luxury here, okay? The people that are depicted as the luxury brand owners, you know, you look at that guy LVMH, forgotten his name, but he's amongst the richest people in the world. He sits across tables with the French, you know, royalty and ministers and prime minister and things of that nature. Don't you come across imposter syndrome when you are also cheering and being a part of these conversations? Because it is something that I don't think there's a lot of representation in those areas, and if you're in rooms like that, you're usually the only person that looks like you. I mean, especially in high stakes industries like the one that you're in. Have you ever faced this? If you have, how do you handle it?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know though. I never think about imposter syndrome because I have a background as a headhunter. I used to interview chief executives and directors and for a living. So to me, they're people, they're human. Like Michelle Obama said, once you've been in those rooms, you know, it's no big deal. So for me, I don't, but I know that I know people talk about people like Bernard Arnault. Yes, I really respect what he's done. He found a formula. He has a way of finding these companies, and he has a way of making the best of them and investing in them and turning them around, etc. So I really, really respect him for that. And I see people like him as the keepers of tradition, which should be kept, because I respect tradition and heritage a lot. However, there's got to be room for innovation as well, because without innovation, people die. And the very bedrock of luxury is actually diversity. And what do I mean? The founders of all the big names that you know today, many of them did not come from money. Coco Chanel was dumped in an orphanage when she was 10 by her dad. She was taught to sew by nuns. She did not come from money. Her first shop was a hat shop before she then went on to found her other businesses, perfume, little black dress, etc. So again, let's, nix that idea that you've got to come from money to set up a luxury brand. Another example is Louis Vuitton. Again, when he was 13, he walked barefoot 300 miles to Paris from his village in France. And along the way, it took him 2 years to do that journey. And along the way, he was working, earning a living, surviving as a 13, 14, 15-year-old boy in those days. So by the time he got to Paris, he was street smart, he was very clever, very astute, and he managed to get to become an apprentice to a box maker. And box makers in those days were very important because they made your boxes for when you travel. So they only worked with people who had money. And one of the clients that he worked for was Josephine, the wife of Napoleon. And it was while he was working as a box maker, he noticed that a lot of the boxes had rounded tops. So that meant you couldn't stack them. So he said, why don't we make the boxes flat? It seems very obvious, but that's what he did. And that's how he created the very classic LVMH box. So there's a knowledge here about once you know the history of certain things and how it came about, the founders, it's, for me, all I see is diversity. So for people, yes, luxury can be exclusive, and the price of entry is whether you can afford to buy in many cases. However, I think people shouldn't self-exclude, because what tends to happen is people go, oh my God, luxury. So people self-exclude thinking that everyone's going to be hoity-toity and up there. No, at the end of the day, if you're a client, if you're a customer, you have the final say and you have the ultimate say in how you spend your money. So for me, when people talk about imposter syndrome, have I had that earlier in my career as a headhunter? Absolutely. And how do you overcome imposter syndrome? You need to be very, very good at what you do. And a little secret, you need to have one superpower. You need to have a superpower. Your superpower doesn't have to be technical. You don't have to be the best at your job, for example. And I would have, as I used to advise, coach and advise my clients, when I was a headhunter, you need to use your superpower. So your superpower could be something like you're very good at connecting people. So when I was a headhunter, my superpower, I had two superpowers. One was I would do the jobs that people hated doing. And that was things like public speaking. People hated public speaking. I wasn't particularly in love with public speaking, but I knew I could do it, and I knew I could do it well. So that was my first superpower. My second superpower was my ability to write. So the articles, I wouldn't say they were like, oh my God, fantastic, but they were good and they were thought-provoking, because I realized that my company website, the homepage was articles. And that meant if you wrote an article, your name was on the homepage. So anyone visiting would at least click or so it was only the boss and myself who were writing articles. So I literally just fell into that. And to hone that writing muscle, I remember writing for free for many other business magazines as well. So I just write, just so I can practice. And I would recycle some of those articles. And another superpower I had was my power in connecting people. And I networked in a completely different way to other people. Because when I was a headhunter, the internet was still a mystery to many people. But I remember thinking, okay, I didn't go to school with the people that we were recruiting, all these candidates. My colleagues would know them from somewhere. I didn't know any of them, but I made up my mind to network. And what I did was, I remember going online and reading an article in Forbes magazine about CEOs having blogs. And then I Googled CEO blogs, and a load of blogs came up. And I would go every Sunday and leave comments on as many CEO blogs as possible. And that's how I landed some of my meetings. So instead of doing the cold calling, I was just commenting. And once you comment, because remember, in those days, not many people had blogs and the traffic wasn't that great. But if you were a regular, you literally were it was like having a direct conversation with potential clients. So that's what I did. So my advice is find your superpower. And for many people, they think it's something they have to be good at. It could even be something that people think is your weakness, for example. A lot of people think, oh my God, I don't want people to know that I'm XYZ. Lean into it. As you know, you could be, for example, if you're dyslexic and you think, I'm dyslexic, I can't write or whatever, use AI, write the article, and then use AI to correct it for you. Luckily, there are so many tools that we can use nowadays. Or literally, if you want to be controversial, you can actually publish your article with all the spelling mistakes and say, can you guess the type of dyslexia that I have? Again, your any perceived weakness can actually be your superpower. It really depends on how you package it and how you present it.
Oh my word. Now, Elizabeth, from just hearing what you're saying, I think you're literally giving people permission to go out there and use what they have, but also letting them know it's going to take a bit of work. I mean, from what I've heard, you had to make those 120 calls until you reached the queen. You had to work, you had to do the writing, you had to do the commenting, you had to show up in America, do all these things. It just wasn't handed to you. Now if somebody's prepared to put in the work, somebody's prepared to have all of that, so they too can maybe break into the luxury market and have a business that's profitable and enjoyable, what would be the first thing that they can do, and how can they get a hold of you, at least to compare notes or for you to help them along the way?
Well, the first thing they need to do, especially if they're trying to break into the luxury market, is buy my book, The Luxpreneur, because what I've done is again, as I said, 2020 onwards, looking for luxury business rooms on Clubhouse. And then I started buying books on luxury business. And I realized two things. Number one, a lot of the books were written by professors of luxury, experts, beautifully written, but a lot of it was no good if you're starting your business from scratch. The second thing I realized about those books was some of them were written by people who had worked for big brands where there was a lot of money. So if you have no money and you want to come into the luxury business, what do? If, like me, you want to start with a secondhand mixer and £40, buy the Luxpreneur, because I take you through the journey. I lay everything bare. The book is in 3 parts. The first thing I talk about is you as a person, the mindset, which speaks to the imposter syndrome that you spoke about earlier on. So I talk about mindset, and that you need to know the type of person you are, so that when you're assembling a team or when you're working with people, you know the right people to have around you. For example, I'm an artisan and I'm a visionary. That is good and bad. It's good to be an artisan because I pay attention to craftsmanship. It's good to be a visionary because I'm always thinking of the future. But the downside is, as an artisan, I'm not paying attention to the money. I'm not paying attention to costs. I'm not paying attention to what's happening out there. I'm just crazy about my product. And as a visionary, I need to be grounded in the present, because yes, it's great thinking about the future, but what about the present? So I now know these are the types of people I need around me. The second part of the book, I talk about the basics of a luxury business, the 5 things you must have to have a luxury business. And I show you how to get those 5 things. I talk about storytelling, craftsmanship. I talk about your business model, your pricing, value, etc. And then the last part of my book, I talk about the different types of luxury clients, because many people start a business without even having an idea of the kind of clients that they need to serve. So you need to know the type of luxury business you want to be, because there are different types of luxury brands, and then you need to know the type of luxury client you want to serve. And no other book, to my knowledge, has broken things down the way I have. So that's why I think first steps, get the book, read the book. And if you want to have a consultation with me, my home is LinkedIn. And every day I try to talk about luxury business in a way that people who are founders can understand. Because for me, when I talk about luxury business, I'm talking about it from a founder's perspective. I'm asking in my head, when Gucci, he worked as a porter at the Savoy when he was 17 till his mid-20s. And that's how he learned about elegant luggage and how design leather goods, how designing leather goods really, really works. Now, if he were to write a book, what kind of book would he write? His book would be different to Bernard Arnault's book. You know, Bernard Arnault of LVMH, they would have different perspectives. So my book is from a founder's perspective, or anyone who already has a business but wants to know how to level up or elevate their business. I give you all the tricks and the tools in my book.
Absolutely. And I'll definitely make sure that all those links are in the show notes. And I think on behalf of anybody who's either going to watch this video or read your book, thank you so much for making luxury accessible. I mean, from what I know and what I've heard and seen out there, it just seems like it's when you know you don't, you know what I mean? When you know how to get by in that market, then you do. And most people that actually are making a lot of luxury businesses, they are going into what's called quiet luxury. All the other loud luxury is now being relegated to even people that can actually afford that particular piece of luxury. So there's a lot that needs to be learned, especially when it comes into those spaces. And I'm just speaking from an outsider point of view. You might be, saying that that's not how it works. So it's
I think you're right in the trend. You know, I think all of a sudden, yes, there is quite luxury for a number of reasons. We're going through hard times right now, and people don't want to be seen to be flaunting their wealth. Having said that, it really depends on the type of luxury client that you are, because there are 8 different types, and there is a type that would naturally go for the quiet luxury, the generational wealth, etc., etc. And there's a type that still want their logos. They still want the status symbol. I don't see Ferrari not selling cars anytime soon. I don't see certain brands not selling anytime soon. Although last year some brands did better than others. But at the end of the day, I would never ever condemn loud luxury or for the sake of quiet luxury, because people are people. And if someone's worked really, really hard and they want to wear all the flashy logos in the world, let's be grateful for them. As I say in my book, a lot of people that talk about, flashy logos and loud luxury, these are the people that are actually bankrolling and keeping luxury in money, because without they're proud to belong to a certain club. They're displaying the logo proudly, and if they want to do that, let them. The one thing I don't want to do is fall into the trap of saying, oh my God, quiet luxury is better than non-quiet luxury, because we all forget that even the quiet luxury people, they might be a few generations ahead, but their forefathers started from somewhere. Every luxury business started as a one-man band. And that is what that is a message I'm giving out. And even nowadays, there are a couple of brands. There's a brand called Jackie Moose, and they're doing things brilliantly. It was started by a young guy in honor of his mother. And it would be easy to look at him and say, oh my God, he's not doing luxury the way it's supposed to be done. But I love his innovation. So the loud luxury, the innovative luxury, is what has given birth to the quiet luxury, and we mustn't forget that. And I think that's just the point I'm trying to make.
Oh, absolutely. For some of us who are on the up and coming, we look at things like that. How do you show up in the world? Who are you? What band do you subscribe to? What does this look, make you sound like in front of certain people? Will people recognize you immediately as part of the gang? You know what I mean? It's all of those shortcuts that people use luxury in order for them to find their station in society. But it's something that you've written about and something that maybe firsthand experience. I mean, tell us, you've worked with very exclusive clients. I mean, you've worked with royalty, rich people. What sort of lesson have you learned? Because some of the people that are watching this also have to sell their products to affluent people. It doesn't necessarily mean they're a luxury brand themselves. What is it about reaching these types of people, and how can we actually maybe start opening up conversations with people of affluence?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to, first of all, don't, how do I put this? It's not people like that. They know when you're just another person with your hand out, they know, you're just there to take their money. So you need to really, really, and I always say this, it starts with a client. You need to know the client that's in front of you. So and there are certain clues as to who that person is. So number one, respect, treat them well on an individual basis, and offer proper value. If you can't do something, tell them you can't do it, but somebody else who could help them, who can help them. So be very open, be very honest, and know who you are, because people want to know who's in front of them. They want to know you. Who are you? Don't try to be somebody that you are not. So that, off the top of my head, will be some of the advice. Also, you need to be good at almost anticipating needs. So there's something called anticipatory service. So when they're sitting in front of you, you need to have two things in mind. They don't like their time wasted. So you need to be able to, if there's a presentation, you're thinking, okay, a half an hour presentation, if you can do it in 10 minutes and wrap it up and give them this, and sort out details later with their people, great. Because if they're sitting in front of you, they are already pre-sold. The money is not the issue. They're willing to buy. But I've seen so many people make the mistake again and again. They insist on going through the whole presentation. They insist on blah, 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 blah. At that point, you've lost them. They're pissed off. So don't oversell, don't overtalk, be confident, and try to get to know the person in front of you, their likes, dislikes, whatever, as much information as you can get, although that can be very hard because some of them are very, very private. However, you can, within the first 5-10 minutes, you can tell a lot from about a person. So try in your mind to absorb that, because sometimes somebody's telling us, I do not like X, and you're trying to convince them, because there's something in sales they call overcoming objections. You do not overcome objections, because it's not a battle of wills. Imagine someone trying to force you to buy something, and you're the one with the money. It's actually doubly irritating. So it's a matter of, okay, that's not working for you. Let's move that to one side. How can I design something for you? If you want me to create something for you, what would it look like? What would it be? So those are some of the things that you need to do in order to move that conversation forward.
Absolutely. Now, Elizabeth, this is something that I've never done before, but knowing who you are right now and knowing what you've come into, I'm looking to design a luxury podcast. How am I doing so far?
You're doing okay. You're doing well, I think. However, I would need to go over what you mean by luxury. Do you mean, what do you mean? Do you want people to pay for it? Do you want it to be exclusive? Do you want it to be something rare? Again, we need to unpack your definition of luxury. Then we need to unpack who your audience is. Who do you want listening to your podcast or watching your podcast? And we also need to unpack, what do you want to do with it in the future? Is it something you want to sell on to Netflix or some other station? What is it you want to do? Do you want to build a business around it? So again, we need to unpack your definition of luxury. Is it about the topics? Is it about the guests you have on? So again, and then we need a benchmark. Who are you looking to emulate out there? Or do you want to create something entirely different that has never been seen in the podcast world? So those are some of the things I would suggest that you start thinking about.
Absolutely. Well, I didn't realize the question was literally gonna go that way. I just thought you were gonna say, "Yeah, this is the most luxurious experience I've ever had," and then I would take that to the bank, like you took the Queen's check to the bank. But I'm really excited about having had you on the show today, Elizabeth. It's been quite a lot of learning and experience, and you do exude, the luxurious, experience that anybody would ever want to feel or experience. But I want to know, what's next for you, Elizabeth? I mean, are there any sort of exciting projects or goals that you're working on that we should also keep an eye on now that you've brought us into your world of luxury?
Gosh, there's always, something going on. But for now, I just want to, because I've just written my book, I just want to promote my book, do more speaking engagements, do more podcast appearances, and then the Diversity in Luxury Awards. We're thinking of doing a few symposiums in the future. We're thinking of creating a number of programs around luxury business founders from different backgrounds. So there is something around that as well that we're trying to do. All will be revealed in due course. But for now, having just finished one, my latest awards, I'm already thinking of next year. I'm already thinking of concepts and ideas. And again, we're always open to nominations. So if you've got anyone or any brand that you want to nominate, do let us know. And I've also got coming up the Diversity in Luxury Leaders list. So we do a list of 100 people around the world that are very much either promoting diversity or they are diverse themselves, etc., etc. So yeah, so there's a lot coming up, a lot on the horizon. Yeah.
Absolutely. Wow, what an incredible conversation there, Elizabeth. I can't thank you enough for the time and the value and also the energy that you brought to the show today. I mean, coming from a science lab to the world of luxury, you definitely are blazing a trail that a lot of people, can follow. And I think today's call was just a masterclass in reinvention, resilience, and also redefining what's possible. So thank you so much for paving the way for most of us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on your show. And yeah, thank you for everything that you're doing.
Absolutely. And still, once again, is this a luxury podcast for you?
I think the jury is out. We've had a lovely conversation, but the jury is out because we haven't defined what luxury is when it comes to a podcast.
Fantastic. I'll take that as a yes. And thank you so much, Elizabeth. I just needed an endorsement from somebody who's had dialogue with the Queen. Now, whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur or a creative professional, just someone who loves a good underdog story, I hope Elizabeth's insights have actually left you inspired. And if you found value in this episode, I actually encourage you to maybe rewatch it because so much was covered, and you might think you got everything, but I don't think everything would have come in the right sort of way that you would have intended and how Elizabeth would have intended. But if you listen again, you'll actually pick up on a few nuggets you might have missed out in the first round there. But if you have gotten enough of what you think you needed from this particular podcast, why don't you share this particular video with somebody who's trying to venture into the luxurious market or into the market of luxury, or they're starting a business in luxury? All right, you might actually help them, you or empower them to build a business that's not just profitable but truly enjoyable. Until next time, thank you, and keep dreaming big and taking action. Bye for now.